All right, so when we're dealing with multiple inheritance, we are dealing with a different structure from what we just did yesterday with multi-layer inheritance. So to just do a quick refresh on what those two camps are here, we looked before where we can have class A that derives to class B, which in and of itself then derives to class C. And we saw then that constructor management is going to be the key issue on this one, keeping track of which variables are passed in our constructors. So contrasting that is going to be the structure that we're going to look at today, where class A is completely separate from class B, and yet they both are going to derive class C. Or in other words, class C is going to have access to all of the public methods of classes A and B. The key difference here is that, well, class B was in the middle before, and as the middleman, class B got to inherit all of the class A public methods. That's no longer the case in this scenario, because we've got A and B here that are completely separate. Those two have nothing to do with each other. So we'd have to make sure to craft our code accordingly. We were in the habit of having in the class B over here, we would have to include A.h, but over here we don't have to. We wouldn't need to include anything with these two files because they're standalone classes. But the difference then becomes, well, in class C here, that's the new derivative, we will have to include both A and B. So this will include A.h and B.h. All right, so a few little semantic differences there. Let's look at some code that I drew up for this, and I posted it on Canvas if anyone is interested. And let me go to Xcode now. So here I'm going back, I'm using the same example that we had before with a student. Now in this case, we're going to have person deriving to CS student, and we're going to have student then deriving to CS student. Or in our diagram here, this person class is class A, and the student class is going to be class B. Now, you'll notice here in our main base class, we haven't changed anything because nothing needs to be changed at all. It's its own standalone class. There's no include header files here, no nothing. So pretty straightforward on that one. Let's look at student.h. This is the one that we changed a little bit. First of all, to make it a complete standalone class because it's not deriving from A any longer. So our class header here is just simply the same, class student, and very simple code. Student is just gonna simply have one private member variable for GPA, and that's it. All right, now let's look at CS student. And again, let me just outline what the structure of these were on the whiteboard here. Okay, so in our case right now, we'll go to some pretty blue font. This class A is going to be person.h. This class B is going to be our student.h. And then our class C is going to be CS student. So that's that triumvirate of the three classes there. So because CS student now is going to derive from two classes simultaneously, we've got to pop some extra code in there that's going to support this. Now, it's important to note here that when you're having multiple inheritance like this from an A and a B, both of them going into a C, that we'll be using the comma operator. We'll use the comma operator specifically twice one in the class header, and then the other is just going to be in the various constructors that we use. If we've got anything passing through, well, then we've got two targets to pass through. So let's look at these just kind of line by line. First, here is our, let me zoom in a little bit. Here's our class header. And you'll note right away that CS student does derive from public person, and it derives from public student. And those are separated by the comma operator, okay? So that's our base construction to get this A and B both inherit to C happening. We'll use the comma there. Everything else looks sort of the same, except let's look at our default constructor here. And we have that same syntax where we have the colon and then person and student separated by a comma. So pretty easy to understand there. Let's look though at the fully developed constructor. And what I'll do here is I'm going to put these on separate lines just for a little better readability. Okay, so here now, here's our CS student constructor. And you'll note that this constructor has got 4 variables in it. And those 4 are the 4 member variables for all of A, B, and C, classes A, B, and C. So all of person, all of student, all of CS student. And just like before then, well, we've got to pass some of these through to the higher level constructors. So we just follow what our plan is. In person.h, person.h needs as its constructor the integer and the string. So over here, this integer s and then the string n, those are the 2 that get passed to person. Similarly with student, here's our developed constructor, and it takes a float for that GPA. So here is the float for the GPA, and that though doesn't belong to person, it belongs to student. So that's where we send that. Now note that in our print function now, since we didn't have any derivative print functions given to us in either of the higher level classes, we do need to go and make sure to print those out explicitly. So we'll first call the person print, and then the student print, and then finally our CS student is going to output the lab assignment. All right. So when we were to run this, let me show my demo program. My demo program here is all I'm doing is including or outputting the object data. And the only include file you need for this is csstudent.h. And why is that? Well, that's because if you go to csstudent.h, that one has to include both of the parents. So that's where we get this daisy chain where everything is included. So remember that both student.h and person.h belong in that derived class, both of those. All right, then back to our main function. Yep, here is my constructor, the fully developed one, and then I'm just going to simply output the names here. You'll note that john.getName, that's still valid because it's going to receive that public method from the person class. And then, of course, john.print is defined in the CS student class. All right, and then let me run it just one more time. And there's all of the data output. All right, so that's our very quick primer on multiple inheritance. And let me